Shall we go on to the second one now? I invite Dr. Karthika to make a presentation. Dr. Karthika teaches at NIT Trichy, and she has also got her PhD from the EFL University, and she has a host of things that she has done, activities that she has worked on, which is really very good for her age, and she looks a very distinguished kind of a person. So I invite you, especially her work with tribal children in Kerala. So we were waiting to hear.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and I'm really grateful to VMFT for this opportunity. As they are putting up the slides, I have a small story to begin with, because I think it is important to contextualize my eligibility to present, or maybe not to present, but to bring this study in front of you, which has been taking shape over a period of time. Yeah, that's the thing. So I would like to begin with a short bio note that being born to a very privileged in terms of caste, class and socio-economic status, to such kind of a family. My parents, because of their ideology, decided to put me in a government Malayalam medium school. And till 10th standard, I did study there, everything in Malayalam. And then I moved to Cotton Hill Government Higher Secondary School here in Trivandrum, where Pravegam became velocity, Twaranam became acceleration, and I was clueless. So I had to compete with these, English medium educated children. And the one who scored 49 out of 50 in SSLC, which is our 10th grade, scored 13 marks out of 150 for her term examination. So this put me under depression. And I would like to tell you that language was the only issue that I had, nothing else. So I am a victim in that sense. I would like to start from there. My father retired as the Joint Director of Tribal Development Department, Tribal Welfare Department from the Secretariat here. And from a very young age onwards, I had been traveling with him to Attapadi, to Wayanad, different parts of the, of the state. And I was familiar with the kind of, in quotes, or maybe without that, atrocities that tribes were exposed to, the tribal children and women were exposed to. But this is all emotional, this is all very subjective. And what made it a little more objective was, I would like to move on. Yeah. This film that got released in 2006, it's not about Mohanlal, it's about that little boy over there whose name is Mani, who is from a particular tribe in Wayanad, Paniya tribe in Wayanad. This boy won the state award for the best child artist for the year 2006, and the government took the initiative to support him, just like we all know that, right? All of a sudden someone comes to the limelight and then there is support from everywhere, and the child was put into a tribal residential school. A few years later, I started following it up. I was also very young. Before I went to England, I think it was during my course at Pondicherry Central University, I just did an investigation with my father, and I found that this guy is not there in that school. No records have him. Where is he? Nobody knows. So I was young again, and it was a little disturbing for me. And my journey with the tribal children began from there, in search of money for years. And it was not that I am an investigative journalist, that I went into the field and searched for him, but I was actually searching the web. I was searching through whatever channels I could. And I found him in 2018. He appearing in a film, Udal Arangal. So it was around 12 to 13 years that he got absent or absconded from the mainstream. And we had a conversation. I came to know about the kind of social anxieties that he had. the way the mainstream society had treated him, which enforced his self kind of exile or whatsoever from the school. He just jumped over the walls and he escaped into a society where nobody recognizes him. He went to Shimoga and he worked in the field. He worked as a mechanic. He did several different jobs, but his passion was cinema. And he was pushed out of it. He was so artistically talented. He came back to the film in 2018 with a lot of compulsion from the part of the filmmaker, Unnikrishnan. Yes, so from there it began. And while I was searching for money, like internally, or, my mind was searching for what happened to this boy, I came across what I told you yesterday in England, these immigrant learners and refugees, especially women who were victims of domestic violence and political atrocities. So their stories, partially in Pashto, which I don't understand, and partially in Urdu, which I could make sense of because of my fanfare for Shah Rukh Khan, I just could grab quite a lot of connecting points there. How does it feel to be pushed outside the peripheries? Even it feels like, you don't have any velocity. You go outside the entire universe, to space or somewhere. So it was really a painful kind of, and then to some extent it was cathartic as well, because I said in a very different sense, I was a victim of this language thing as well. Mani mentioned that they were teaching me in Malayalam. I didn't understand anything. Why should I be in that school? That is why I went. And there was nothing that was hitting me in that school other than insult, and insult. Why should I be? It was just because now he can say that because he is a film star. He was asked to work with Rajnikant. He couldn't because his father was engaged in a. He was a culprit or something like that. So some personal tragedy, he couldn't join. But then you look at it, it is giving us a very different kind of social fabric. And from there, I started thinking about what is English doing to them. I have another story as well, but that's not personal. So I thought that it matters quite a lot because we need to move away from all these theoretically driven stuff to a pedagogy of care. And this is very easy to preach, and it's so interesting to discourse on that in an air-conditioned room like this, in a very privileged setup like Center for Development Studies. But let's see how we can contextualize it in 20 minutes. So I understand that socially just and inclusive language education is what we've been discussing from yesterday. And this is the background in which I started working. There are 37 scheduled tribes according to the government of India's, whatever census or whatsoever, and 20 model residential schools exclusively for tribal children, and 2 CBSE school among them. And most of the other schools, not most of, the 18 other schools are following the state syllabus and Malayalam medium instruction. Whereas in the CBSE schools, everything is, even the content is supposed to be delivered in English. So now what I'm going to present you is a baseline study of this ongoing research that I've been into for so many years. And I don't have any clear findings to tell you that, well, this is the practice and this is the best that we can go for, but I have really got suggestions. And these are available in the website, so I won't spare a lot of time, but please understand that nothing of this thing happens. These are all there in print and in the digital form over there. I'm sorry. But yeah, this is why I said I want to tell you before I begin the presentation that I'm eligible to discuss this, and I'm very much aware of the political correctness that is part of this. So I have some very disturbing kind of things to say, but please understand that I've been a victim of language politics. I've been through this journey of money, and many people like money. So I can comfortably say that. Now, when it comes to language proficiency, whatever I've put in double quotes are from someone whom I interviewed, and they said that I should not disclose anything about their identity. So I would rather preserve that. I'd stick to my promise. Different tribes, different tongues. And please understand that this is all coming with a lot of contempt and scorn. And it's not with any kind of sensitivity or any kind of justice that it comes out. And Malayalam medium instruction is supposed to be first language. And proficiency in Malayalam, the teachers say that it's largely intermediate. They're not proficient. The tribal children are not proficient. And the principal says, nil, absolutely zero English, a big zero. So this was what she said about the tribal students' English proficiency, having all those spoken English classes. Please note that. And the methodology that I used for this thing, it's purely qualitative. Nothing was quantified. I couldn't do that because I said there was an emotional connect as well. Teachers, learners, and principals, and some of the government officials who were part of this policy making and sending these people and the selection committee and all. So to examine the reasons of lack of proficiency in English, understanding the challenges the teachers and learners face, to document how they address and challenges, and nothing happened. These were the 3 questions that I moved on with. None of them could be answered as such, because let us think about English education after we think about education itself. The problem was not with English education, the education itself was a problem. So without cracking that, I could not move a step forward with language at all. So this is a story of a miserable researcher in a very diverse kind of context, if you want to put it. But I could speak to the learners, and this is what the learners came up with. I couldn't perceive their attitude towards learning because it was very difficult. They were spaced out. They couldn't put anything in words. They were apprehensive. They doubted my integrity as well. It was very difficult. But I understood that English was never a career determinant for them because they don't see a future for them, the future that we mainstream people imagine. They don't have it. They know that my father was this. I don't know who my mother is, or my mother was this. I don't know who my father is. And I am part of this tribe. I'll go collect honey, or I'll go hunt, or I'll go do something that my people are doing. And that's it. Why English? This was a question that I was facing. And language barriers between tribal languages and English, it didn't make sense to them at all. We have seen that yesterday in some presentation. And alienation from curriculum materials, which are very disconnected from their lived realities. There is nothing that talks about it. And even if they're getting it, it's a very fascinating kind of account of tribal life. But actually, there is nothing. There is nothing in the textbook that connects them with their experience. It's always about some other kind of. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be exposed to other things, but when they are so disconnected from their roots, it's very difficult for them to associate. No goal orientation, no self-motivation, nothing. I mean, self-motivation, we can't imagine in that setup. Absolute pessimism about the way in which they are treated by the mainstream society. We have to take it with a pinch of salt because, this could be a rhetoric as well. I don't know. They might be overreacting to something, overreacting in court, but it's true that the teachers are not treating them well. And that brings the last point. In groups, they yelled. What are the reasons for not learning? Teachers. I mean, I should stop with that. And then they were the reasons for disengagement, I must say. And teachers' perspectives, this is very interesting. Low learner engagement, as if somebody else has to ensure that engagement is there, or students should bring in. Zero learner motivation. Well, they are connected. And the next statement is pretty heavy for me. Learners are nostalgic nomads. They go back. If teachers go with these kind of notions in their heads, where is engagement? Where is motivation? Where is any kind of learning happening? I doubt. English medium instructions, and then they go. They can't understand the basics. How can we teach them all subjects in English? Even English classes must be taken in a multilingual manner. And I asked her, what is multilingual? And she was talking about translation. And how far can you translate? I said multilingualism and translation. She has, this particular principal is very well educated, very smart, but still there is. And then others are not even by educational qualification anywhere near her. Anyway, let's move on. Heterogeneous classroom, lack of learner cooperation, learning disabilities. So I asked again, what are learning disabilities? They don't understand what are learning disabilities. I said, are they dyslexic? They have no idea what is dyslexia. there's nothing. So whenever the student stumbles, whenever the student stammers, there is a learning disability, right? So it's us. We should look back to us. Personality issues, and the next one is pretty heavy: gene mutation. Well, so we bring in biology, neuroscience, psychology, and everything into ELT, and we do this. Interdisciplinarity means no discipline at all. Homosexuality, that's yet another thing. So I said, how is homosexuality connected to English classroom? Dario Benegas has a very interesting article on queer politics or something in ELT classroom. I should go back and read that. So how homosexuality is working in this context? Yes, she said it's so difficult for teachers to connect with children who are, always engaged in sexual behavior. Then I don't have an answer to that. So I just documented it there. Lack of parental care because, they are discarded kind of children. They're not wanted at home, and many of them don't know who their parents are, so they are pushed there for food, and the food don't talk about it, it's very dirty. And zero willingness to learn, they don't have any willingness to learn, so whatever in courts are from the teachers. So these were the teachers' perspectives when I asked about English, and then I understood that there's no point in asking about English because the total setup is quite like puzzling. And the systemic challenges: corruption and bureaucracy. The files won't move on time, and the person will buy 100 soaps soap bars for 60 students every month, and this gets repeated. So every month one student should get one brush, soap, paste, and all sorts of things. So the rest of the money goes to the person's bank account or wherever. Such kind of corruption from the beginning, from the root to whatever level. Political influences governing the kind of, my people gets recruited, your people won't get recruited kind of thing. Lack of clear vision and objectives from the part of the government, and wrong recruits. Again, I would like to reiterate, because many of them are part-timers and not permanent employee. They come, they go, they have zero commitments. And that is, I'm not challenging any of the youngsters here, but the teachers are also with this vibes and Django and that kind of diction, and they just go, and there is a big disconnect between the tribal students. Thank you. I'll conclude. The teachers who are very young, I'm not saying that I'm not jealous of being young. I mean, you being young and I'm being a little old, but I'm telling you that the kind of diction, the lingua, it doesn't connect. And there is no social kind of connect or anything with them. So these were the key issues to be addressed in the classroom: the teacher training in a culturally responsive pedagogy, and perhaps by your multilingual kind of teacher aids. Neglect of indigenous knowledge system was a little upsetting kind of thing. I'm not talking about Bharatiya knowledge system or anything, but indigenous knowledge system has to be focused. And I looked at social emotional learning and multiple intelligences and multicultural education framework, and I thought there should be a focus on role models from their community, a need for systemic support and resource allocation. And now this is the framework of social emotional learning. I won't go into the details because it's a theory, it is available. And I don't believe in theories. I go to the classroom, I get the ground reality, then come back to theory and see if I can learn something from the theory, go back to the class and then execute that. So I'm yet to do the second phase of it. I'll conclude in 5 minutes, ma'am. Self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And if you go for the multicultural education framework, content integration, knowledge construction, prejudice rejection, empowering school culture, equity pedagogy. Very easy to say it, very nice to talk about it. I'm a person who tried to practice it in Telangana, and I realized that we have from VIT we have donated a big panel of window frames, which are wooden ones, and 3 years later when I went for this social outreach activity, all the window panes were taken away by the principal of the school. So yeah, and 7 computers which were given, they were also taken away by the teachers. So this is the kind of, empowering school culture that they have we must say, because we are part of India. And theory of multiple intelligences by Gardner. This is something I found to be quite working with the tribal learners, because, you ask them to sing. they do that in their language, and they have the rhythm, they have the speed, and they have the pace. So you try to, when I talk to them, I was not teaching them English, but I said, you tell me. So it's kind of a reverse teaching that was working in their context. And all these skills, I'm not saying that we have to map everything to all bodily kinesthetics or intrapersonal or interpersonal kind of thing. I'm finishing, ma'am. Then we have this, I have this experience with Telangana Social Welfare School, where there is this single person. I'm not a fan of him. There's this single person called Dr. R.S. Praveen Kumar, IPS, who took charge as the secretary for Telangana Social Welfare School. I was fortunate to work with them for 3 years, which I spent in English and Foreign Languages University. So I've been there as a teacher trainer. I worked very close with R.S. Praveen Kumar, and been there with the students, with the teachers. So, I'm qualified to talk about it. He had this 10 commandments for the students. And I was asking him, how do you think this works? He said, Karthika, look, their self-respect. We are Ambedkarists. Their self-respect. And I see education, especially English education, as the only emancipation agent. Well, and there I have a problem, because my supervisor was all about L1 and L2 and multilinguality, and so it was totally like difficult. So I wrote to Skatnab Kangas. Some of you might know her. I had a discussion with her later, and she told me that, Karthika, there are different kind of, this was like a few months before she passed away. She said, Karthika, you keep working on that. One day you will have that wow moment. And I'm nobody to say where you should go, what you should go. I mean, basically, she didn't guide me, but she just told me to move ahead. So when I moved ahead, I had this opportunity to see this girl, Purna Malavat. There is a beautiful movie named Purna by Rahul Bose. You can check that out. It showcases the entire story of Purna and Anand, who were actually nurtured by Dr. R.S. Praveen Kumar, because he thought that, it's impossible to teach them anything if we don't acknowledge their culture. And he found that they were tuned, their bodies and minds were powerful enough to climb the trees, climb the mountains, go for hiking and such things. So what Praveen Kumar did, instead of putting them into a classroom for hours and hours together, he took them out for hiking. And look at it, she is the most youngest, or maybe perhaps the first youngest girl to climb Mount Everest. And I've been there in the crowd who cheered her up when she came back from the, after conquering it. So I'm not a spokesperson for this guy who changed his profession into a politician. I don't approve of that at all. But this story, where multicultural education, social emotional learning, and everything was clubbed into the pedagogy, was something that was nothing short very inspiring for me. And what they did was storytelling and folk narratives being incorporated into English lessons using multilingual and bilingual teaching aids, and coming up with lots of cultural festivals, art and community involvement, which I wish had happened in the case of Mani, with whose photograph we began the entire thing. He had to wait for 13 long years to come back to the mainstream. And art integrated language learning, which I recently started experimenting with, which makes a lot more sense in the Tamil medium school, to which I send my child as well. So it's really like quite working with the students over there. And teacher training in culturally sensitive pedagogy. The other one is a repetition, I believe. Encouraging participatory curriculum design, which is very difficult, but then at least in pedagogical patterns, we can have some kind of interactions with the students, and aligning assessments with culturally relevant context, which is kind of a suggestion, but I have not experimented with it, so I'm not going to talk more about it. And promoting a sense of identity and agency among the tribal children, which I found that quite important. When we ask them to teach us, they have lots to say in whichever language. English education as a tool for bridging such kind of systemic inequalities. And I don't think English should be replaced, or English should be taught at the cost of another language, but it should just work alongside other languages. And as my supervisor would say, your language classroom should not be a language classroom, but it should be a languages classroom. And I believe, as Hemjinot says, I'm a survivor of a concentration camp. My eyes saw what no person should witness: gas chambers built by learned engineers, children poisoned by educated physicians, infants killed by trained nurses, women and babies shot by high school and college graduates. So I'm suspicious of education. My request is this: help your children become human. Your efforts must never produce learned monsters, skilled psychopaths, or educated Aikmans. Reading, writing, and arithmetic are important only if they serve to make our children more human. Thank you.